four pillars of Hermetic science and Hermetic arts are astrology, tarot, Kabbalah, and alchemy.
Welcome to this new episode, and we have HinduDave back from Pi. How are you, HinduDave?
Very well, doing good, really good. Enjoying the time in the mountains here in Pi.
Sounds great. So we are very, very, very happy to have HinduDave back. I think we did 3 or 4 interviews with you already, covering different type of subjects. But just as a reminder, HinduDave is an archetypal astrologist. Is a student of Jung, so he's very much into Jungian psychology. He's also very well versed in sort of world religions, mythology, and is a temple builder in Pi. So he lives in a quite extraordinary sort of property in Pi that he built himself, that includes sort of guest accommodation as well. And he's going to do some retreats. He's already opening up his house for people to come and stay through the Airbnb. But maybe we'll talk about it more later. Today, though, HinduDave, you're gonna talk about Hermetic Kabbalah. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes. And first of all, I'd like to say something about hermetics. Hermeticism is a whole philosophic, even a religious reality, really rooted in the deep pagan soul, in but Hermes. So the Hermetics means of Hermes, of the god Hermes, and Hermes is not only the communicator and messenger and swift of tongue and language and quick wit, and he's also Hermes Psychopompus, the Earth Hermes, the Virgo Hermes. So he's the guide of souls, and he carries the keys for transition between different levels of reality and different journeys of the soul between bodies too. He takes care of that, escorts you from this body to the next body, your next incarnation. And so, but traditionally, but the 4 Hermetic or sciences of Hermes, and all this was formulated in Alexandria, which was the cauldron of evolution. It was like, that was the hot spot in that was ground zero for spiritual evolution and philosophical development, and Hermes is said to have incarnated there. His name was Hermes Trisgrammatos, which means Hermes 3 times greatest, but it was a deep fusion of like Greco-Egyptian, and already Buddhist influences were coming in because of post Alexander the Great, but the four pillars of Hermetic science and Hermetic arts are astrology, tarot, Kabbalah, and alchemy. The whole alchemical procedure and the alchemical secrets, all those are the secrets. Those are Hermes' prime teachings. He uses that all through all of them, and his most famous quote comes from, it's known as the Emerald Tablet of Hermes. The Emerald Tablet, they just call it the Emerald Tablet. And the first line, and this is a bit of a paraphrase with me, so I'm adding some expansion to it, but essentially he says, as above, so below, as within, so without, for the making of the miracle of the one into the many, and the return of the many to the one. That's the first line, It's all alchemical procedure, and then all the sign. You have to know the astrological language. You have to know the structure of the Kabbalistic tree of life, and you have to know the tarot keys too. You have to, this all unites over a hermetic secret number 22. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. There are 22 major cards in the tarot. There are 22 paths on the Kabbalah, the tree of life, connecting the 10 levels, the 10 faces of God. And then there are 22 prime symbols in astrology. 12 signs, 10 planets makes 22.
Okay, so you say that Hermetic sciences can be divided into 4 different disciplines, and you kind of you mentioned them all. And of course, we talked about astrology already quite in details on this channel. So we got you guys can go and watch the astrology archetypal astrology interview. And we don't know so much about the Kabbalah. It sounds like quite
Right,
esoteric. And is it?
right.
I mean,
It is.
you're gonna talk about alchemy as well, or it's gonna be mostly about the
No,
Kabbalah
we're going to
today?
concentrate on Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is uh, it's a profound schematic archetypal uh, structure of the uh, of the human being, the human microcosm, and it's a map of evolution of the whole species and how, like it gets very mystical and religious too. That it's this like the blueprint out of which the creator gave birth to this universe and how we return out of matter and such things. And there are 10 spheres called Sephiroth. Sephiroth is the Hebrew term. And I think of them as like the pantheon. They're like the faces of the prime faces and powers of deity, just like the 10 signs of the, or 10 planets in Western astrology. So each one of those is like a uh, a prime uh, factor and essential ingredient. We need all 10 of those ingredients to attain wholeness. So the Kabbalah organizes it on this tree. It shows where those planets lie and what's level of consciousness you're in. And 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 the best thing to do really is to start at the bottom of the tree. And it's called Malkuth. And it has all 4 elements in there. And that's the physical world. That's materiality, that's physicality, that's this body that you inhabit now. And then and all the realities of time and matter, and is that time and matter are impermanent. So it's all temporality. This is the temporal world. The physical world is the temporal world. Then, but it's called the kingdom. It's known as the kingdom. So it's like you have to be centered in your temple and the kingdom of your own body, and it helps hopefully be really healthy and balanced and all. That's like the balance of the elements, the 4 elements. They have to be in balance for you to have a vibrant body. Then the next level up on the tree, and Yesod means foundation, and this is the sphere of the psychological and the whole sphere of the psyche of our individual psychology and our unique biographical story and all the history related to it. And the moon is the past too, so it has to do with where we come from and what are like what family of origin, what were the dynamics in the family of origin, how did you do your original imprints, and it's your what they term in psychology the intrapsychic domain. And so it's the internal experience, the most subjective state. It's you, how you talk to yourself, your style of analyzing things, and how you habitually act, and what your preferences are, and what your beliefs are, your belief systems. All that's like part of the psychological, the interior. How we metabolize life too, how we digest it. And so the moon too has that feeling of like digestive tract too. So there's still the psyche and the body are like deeply interwoven in each other. And the psyche gets incredibly trapped in the body many times too, in the different Hermetic traditions. That a lot of suffering can come out of that because everything is temporary. Everything's uh, in that cycle of the moon is always gaining light or losing light. The river is always flowing by. And then the next level up, and they're numbered too. You start at the bottom where we were. That's Malkuth, the kingdom, is number 10. Then we went up to number 9, Yesod, the psychological, the psyche, the lunar. Then you go left. It's called the the serpent path of evolution. The serpent is the Kundalini is rising up out of the body, out of the root chakra, coming into a sense of self-awareness with the moon and the psyche. And then it moves over to Mercury, and Mercury, the Kabbalistic name is Hod, Hod, and essentially it means like when the British say brilliant, like a brilliant idea, something really bright, intelligent, clever, all the Hermes stuff, like really, and it's the rational mind, it's the uh, uh, technology producing mind, it's a whole sphere of communication and in articulating your views and your opinions and your beliefs. So like this podcast is a perfect example of Hermes like that. So we have the intellect then, and then finally this is the bottom part of the tree. Then the fourth is called Netzach, and that means victory, and it's Venus, and it's the passion of the heart. It's the desire to create, to live out of a vibrant life where there's sensuality and there's intimacy and there's love, there's beauty, there's aesthetic. So these 4 factors, the body, the psyche, the intellect, and the heart, that makes up the unit of incarnation. What the Hindus we call in the West, we call the psyche, and then the Romans too call the anima. So the psyche and the anima, you're animate or you're inanimate. As soon as the psyche enters the vessel of the body, the physical, you become animated. And the jiva and the psyche that lives in the prana, that's its medium. So your first inhalation at birth, you're animated, you're ensouled, and and so and then you have your intellect and your rationality, your communicator self, your curiosity, your passion to learn and to communicate what you know, and that's and it's the sword and it's the intellect, and in the symbology of the tarot, it's the sword, and then Venus is your heart, the passion of your heart, your creative drives and your yearning for romance, and your sensibility of beauty, how you adorn your space and yourself, and how you perceive beauty. That's all Venus. Plus, Venus also represents allurement and magnetism. How the goddess pulls to herself. She's got incredible magnetic mojo, Venus. And so anyway, this is those 4 factors: the Earth, the Moon, Mercury, and Venus. So the language of astrology is critical to be able to navigate through any of these Hermetic systems. And when you've had some exposure, like we've had together, then it's like, okay, and that's the Hermetic side. You're using astrology and the mythological underpinnings of astrology to understand the Kabbalah, as opposed to more using the Bible more, and using and that's equally as powerful. But this is like the Western way, the occult way. And actually, like Aleister Crowley, who was a complete occult genius, and William Butler Yeats, the author of that staggering poem Second Coming, were both parts of there was called the Hermetic Order, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. It was a London secret society, and Hermetic Order again. So they were practicing Kabbalah big time. And that's how Crowley developed his tarot too, to integrate all that Kabbalistic hidden meanings about And so these, when you know these different archetypes in yourself, so you, like for instance, you know about Mercury through astrology, what sign it's in, what house it's in, how it's related to other planets. So all that applies here too. But this Kabbalah shows how the planetary deities and archetypes are directly related to each other. They're fixed in these positions on the tree. And so that's an example of like how to and that's like the embodiment level of the tree. That's when you're a particular person, you know, and you're from a particular place, and you know you have your unique temperament and personality, and all that's part of this bottom part of the tree. And then the next sphere up, uh, sphere number 6. This is Tiferet. It's called Tiferet, and Tiferet means beauty, like with the big B. Like beauty is a deity, even, you know. It's like beauty is a secret of the how the universe came into existence, and how beauty is a core principle, and it's right at the center of the tree. It touches all the other planetary spheres, and it's like just like the sun. It's this. It is this the outer sun. The same thing. The planets are part of the solar system and planetary system, orbiting around the star, the sun. And the same. This is the inner sun. All these things are archetypes. Are like the planets are like the outer, most physicalized form of that archetype. But they're like the timing piece, because they keep moving in exact speeds, and so it's like a timing piece for karmas and how they unfold. But the the, the inner sun, this is called the Atma, the psyche, the moon, Yesod, is called Jiva, and it's called Jiva Atman is like the full name, and Jiva Atman means air breathing soul, and that's the first thing you do when you incarnate is you take an inhale, right? The last thing you're going to do is exhale, and uh, and so the Atma, the inner sun, is the birthless and deathless eternity, the eternal now. That it's like it's depicted as like the eye of God, you know, like on the back of the American seal too. It's on top of the pyramid. Is just one eye, the eye in the pyramid. God we trust, and this. So it's like this is the Atma is uh, the best way to describe too. It's like the literature and the scripture from Hinduism and Christianity, and is like these are like the words of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, or like the words of Christ on the sermon, the Beatitudes, the beauty thing again. What is beautiful about the soul? The teachings of Buddha, the Dhammapada. So these things too, it's like these are like they call Sanatana Dharma, the eternal truth. They're always true. They're spoken at thousand, some of them, you know, like Ramayana is, you know, 5,000 years old or more, you know. So um but that's the language there, and it's you move into the transpersonal bands of consciousness where you're not, because the like I was just describing, those first 4 levels, that's when you're really a discrete individual the most. You're fully in this identity, you're in this body, you're in all these karmas too. You come into, you know, it's like you come into this time in history, into this particular family and this particular language system and country, and then you have all your personal history, all that's, and then the Tiferet is when you're this is the, like I was saying, the bottom is the physical world, and Tiferet, we're going up the Shushumna, up the center of the tree, is uh, that's the archetypal mythic archetypal level. It's spiritual. It's the spiritual level of our identity. We're all these things at once. We're physical beings, we're psychological beings, we're spiritual beings. And then at the very top of the tree, going up the Shushumna, up this evolutionary channel, is that's the Pada Atman. That's like Mahavishnu, the multi-headed vision that Krishna received on the battlefield, and So it's the Mahatma or the Parabrahman is the undifferentiated totality. It's like Vishnu's dreaming the whole universe floating on the ocean of existence on his snake mattress. It's like the universal stuff. So that's the transcendental. So again, you start at the bottom of the tree, the physical, Malkut, the four elements, Yesod, the moon, psychological, the interior subjective reality, the unique identity. Six, or Tiferet, the spiritual, the archetypal, the birthless, deathless spark that causes you to exist. And then the top of the tree is the supreme being, the whole of and it's the transcendental realm and the transpersonal, where you're going beyond the contemporary world, beyond personal identity, beyond to higher and higher bands of consciousness, where eventually it's Neptune at the top of the tree too, and you fuse into God, you become one.
Okay, so I understand. You explained very well. The chart or the Kabbalah.
The tree, the
The
Kabbalistic tree, called the tree of life too. That's what it's known as well.
Okay, so you explained very well the tree of life, and I'd like to ask you now, how can we translate that into a practical, sort of day-to-day life? Once I understand that there are different realms, different parts of myself, I can also see, as you said, as within, so without. So also there are the same elements or the same sort of components of reality manifest in the outer world. So I can see them in relationships. I can see them in my day-to-day life. I can see them sort of in the starting from the material, going to the psychic or the psychological, and then going into the spiritual. But I mean, is there any sort of practical lessons that people can take from learning the Kabbalah?
I think a huge amount. It's really a map to your totality. And astrology really applies here too. It's like you can put your horoscope, like we looked at your chart. I don't remember it now, but your sun is, refresh my mind with what's your birthday, Luca? What is your birthday?
So
Luca?
I 11th of October 1977. So I'm
Okay.
Libra.
So you're a Libra sun. So Tipperith is going to be sun in Libra, right? So that fits very beautifully there too, because the Libra is that love of balance and centering, and it's Venus ruled, so it's beauty. It's like beauty. That's what the Tipperith means. So it's like this sense of being centered in yourself, and the sense of non-struggle that comes with that, and the falling away of fear too. When you realize, that you're at the same time you're this person having, your life and your experience, and you have your own very personal history. And this is like what the Jungians call individuation, where you start turning from that bottom, the incarnating self, the body, psyche, intellect, heart, passion structure, and it's like they call it the ego self axis, which where your unique individuality, which is the four bottom parts of the tree, are beginning to have contact with the hidden wholeness in you, the spirit that causes you to exist. And and it's like as soon as the jiva and the atma, and they're the sun and the moon too, so like the king and the queen of consciousness in a way, in the language of alchemy. And when they start to coordinate, when your ecosystem, your in your intellect and your passions start to coordinate with the spiritual yearning for a contact with something much more fundamental and vast, and it's like a yearning, like the Buddhists, like yearning for liberation, yearning for, and like and it's like this is, and it's said too, it's like the jiva and the atma, the inner moon and the sun, when they leave the body in your final exhale, because they live in the breath, that's it. It's like, Elvis has left the building. It's time to, you got to do something with the body now. It's inanimate now. It's been deanimated, right? Because the soul left. So that spark of eternity, that's what that represents there. So it's like that knowledge of that is profoundly healing, and the soul needs it. That's why really the language of the soul itself it is mythology and religion, and that's that level of contacting the self, and that's what individuation is too. It's like self actualization, moving more and more toward a transpersonal orientation to life, and it's like it's like a spiritual crisis that can happen quite often at midlife too. When people they follow all their passions and their dreams. It's like my mentor Joseph Campbell said, it's like you climbed the wall of success, the ladder of success, and you got to the top of the ladder and you found it was against the wrong wall, and so this is this yearning, and we're these things all at the same time. They're out of the field of vision for most people. They don't put attention on it. So it's like it's embedded in more unknown, because of attention's on what's happening with my body, my psyche, the things I'm doing with my life. All the attention's on that, and it's appropriate too. You need to do that, for the first. But this is like Jung's really about the second half of life. That's when you start turning to these higher concerns, and your own mortality becomes more visible. The impermanence of it all, and the need to kind of to root yourself in a more eternal ground inside your own psyche. All these things are their inheritance. They're all in there automatically, but they're not actualized yet. That's when you got self-actualization. Then your perception of self and the world gets much wider. You're thinking big historical grand patterns and rising and fallings of civilization and different. So this is extremely ancient tool too for the philosophers and sages and occult masters, alchemists. They all use this material as a way to navigate into the interior and to find the gold, the true gold, not the fool's gold. The true gold that you discover is your own eternity, in your own divinity, in your oneness with the eternal through your eternal bond with the divine. So it's like, and then you move up the tree too, and like Mars is the next one there. It's called Gebura, it means severity, and this is the hero warrior archetype, and so it's about being courageous, being spontaneous, taking risks, not being fear-based. You feel the fear, you do it anyway. It's like the right arm of God too. It's like when you look in the tree, when you have the photo, you'll see there's a superimposed over the 10 spheres of the tree of life is the Adam Kadmon, they call him. You see a man, you'll see an image of a man in this particular tree, and that's the anthropos. That's the eternal self. That's the like the deep eternal psyche that's lived through many cycles. Jung called him the 3 million-year-old man that exists in the human psyche, and it's possible to dialogue with him and know him, but the language is completely different. It's like the language of nature, really, and the language of metaphor and mythic symbology. It's like, and the soul actually needs that. Otherwise, it gets unhealthy. That's why the films like, the Lord of the Rings, and Star Trek, and Star Wars, and the Marvel universe, and they need it. They're hungry. They have to have that recentering to these eternal patterns. So the Kabbalah is this map of that.
HinduDave, what you say is really fascinating, you know, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of another system that is the chakras or the chakra system, which come from the yoga tradition and somewhat, you know, people in Copenhagen might be more familiar with it. Because again, you know, it starts with the Muladhara chakra, and which is more like the seat of materiality, the material being, etc. And so the basic sort of survival, fear, and then it moves up gradually. Is there sort of any comparison or benchmark you can do between the two systems?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a striking parallel because when you get into this kind of material, you get into the universal archetypal structures of things. So they all line up remarkably because you're operating at a depth level, the esoteric core. So in the Kabbalah, the bottom of the tree is Malkuth, the physicality, the four elements. It's the dance of the four elements that gives form to physicality and to material realities. And so that's the somatic, the physical somatic. Then the next, going up the central pillar, the mystic way, it's known as too. You're following the way of the avatars and the great incarnations and in universal religious truths, and when you can read the symbols deep enough. And then the next sphere up is the moon, and the moon is the psyche, the individual psyche. So that's our most intimate subjectivity, and so it's like the whole and all the moods and shifting. It's always moving too. The moods are changing, the ideas are changing, and so that's the second chakra. The body somatic realm is the root chakra. Now, this is the moon. The moon rules the navel chakra, right? And that's the umbilicus. That's where the mother is birthing us into all these different forms, right there. And that's the moon. And that in the psyche too, it's like personal satisfaction, a feeling of like the moon too wants safety and sense of attachment to place, and it's the bonding element. It's a water element, and it's like how you're bonded to your mother, and how you grew up under the influence of that. So that's the second chakra, and the second chakra is considered the psychological through Kabbalah. And then the third chakra is actually, before I was talking about Mercury, Hod, and Netzach, Venus, they make the next polarity up the tree as you're going up, and the path. There are 22 paths linking all the planets and it's static in a way. This is like a schematic, This is the way the planets, the archetypes are related to each other, right in the prime blueprint. And anyway, the path that connects the head and the heart is the tarot card, lightning struck tower. Right? It's like it's not an easy alchemy to get get Venus and to get the head and the heart together, to get Venus and Mercury harmonizing, and when it does, and so that's the solar plexus. So it's like a place of conflict too, and personal power, and who has the potency over this, and ruled by Mars. So it's the warrior archetype, and it's going to be like the battle of the sexes too, or the battle of the battle between uh, the masculine and feminine, trying to work things out over millennia, but at the card there is a lightning struck tower. And then going up the center pillar from the moon, from the psychological, you go up to Tiferet, the inner sun that is the principle of beauty itself and truth, beauty and truth, and the Sanatana Dharma. That's actually the phrase that the Hindus use for their religion. They don't call themselves Hindus. In their own religion, it's like Sanatana Dharma means eternal truth. So that level, and this is like the archetypal level of reality. So first is somatic, physical, second psychological, personal, and now we're in the archetypal, mythic, religious metaphor, and that's the heart chakra. And that's the pivot point. That's like the point where everything, you look in the tree too, all the planets are connected, just like how the sun is at the center of the solar system. And the whole thing is dancing as is above, so below. It's happening. The below is the microcosm. It's you, the inner planets, the inner archetypal dance. And so the heart is where we begin to awaken to higher reality, where empathy is born, self-sacrifice is born, sharing, uh, yearning for harmony and fairness and justice. All Libra. It's like Libra's zone here. The and So that's the heart chakra, and then you go up again, and there's the next polarity of the two separates is Mars and Jupiter are in natural polarity with each other, and so it has to do with will, like the power of the will and the power, personal power, how much power an individual has, and then Jupiter is magnanimousness, generosity of heart, compassion, loving wisdom. But you can give it all away. So you become like a victim too if this gets out of balance. But the card that connects them is in the tarot is strength. In the traditional deck, it's a maiden, a woman like long dress, and she's holding a lion's mouth closed. I don't know if you've ever seen that card, but in the Crowley deck, it's the Scarlet Woman, a naked woman riding the lions in ecstasy, but it's like, so that chakra is the throat chakra, the intersection there. That's the throat chakra. And so that the throat chakra too is not just about communication and articulation of your understanding and your worldview and such. It's also it's like the Virgo part of Mercury, because it's ruled by Mercury here. It's the Mercury center, but it's also like self-analysis and self-purification. It could be, like even fasting and diet in a way. That's the most fundamental level. But really, it's a purification of the psyche and cleansing the psyche of complexes and places where we get into repetition compulsions, where we make the same painful error over and over, like sorting all that stuff out. So it's like a self-purification process. And that's so that's the throat chakra is on the tree. And then the next level, there's an 11th hidden sephira. It's called Doth. That's where George Lucas got Darth Vader too. It's like Doth means, and it's Pluto. Pluto is the ruler of this, and Hades, the Greek god Hades, becomes Pluto in Rome. Whenever he comes up to the material world, he's invisible. He wears this helmet of invisibility, So he's the doorway to the eternal. Like when you pass through him, all the bodies are left behind. All that's finished. You're moving up toward the transcendental bands. They call the supernal triangle at the top of the tree. Those are like in Hinduism, those are the supreme deities, like Vishnu and Shiva and Mahadevi, those three in particular. And none of, all of them, they don't have a father, they don't have a mother. Shiva doesn't have a father, he doesn't have a mother. He's, and so it's like, and it's the outer planets too. Shiva is Pluto. And so that's the ajna, the third eye. Shiva's third eye too, right? The triumvirate, his third eye opening up is Pluto. So it's like a Plutonian ray too, that vaporizes everything that's material. Everything that is of time is destroyed. That's why he's always laying down. He's always pure white marble, and Kali's standing on top of it. The Mahadevi in the form of Kali, and she's black, and he's a corpse too. He's in the Shivasana pose, and he's eternity. And he's white. He's motionless. Kali means black time. She's the moving face of eternity, and she's standing on top of him, dancing on top of him. And so then You go up the tree to the very top. It's called Kether, the crown chakra. Same thing, the crown chakra, and that's Mahavishnu. That's the supreme. Vishnu means all pervading. Vishnu is uh, the eternal circle, or the sacred circle, whose circumference is nowhere, whose center is everywhere, and uh, he's the super soul. He's the consciousness that is inside everyone. He's the one being gazing out of all eyes. And it's the nature of dreams. Neptune rules this. Neptune is the collective unconscious and the dream. And you're melting into infinity then, going into nirvanic realms. And so that's what the crown chakra does too. And you open, that's the gate. If you have your shit together, that's where you make the exit. When you leave this form, you go out the crown. Some people don't have that skill yet, so they get stuck in different. So that's how beautifully, really, and then it adds these very precise planetary assignments to all the chakras, that are based on the Kabbalistic configuration.
Sounds great. Thank you for explaining it. And it's very simple and it's interesting, of course, and it's somewhat easier for us maybe to relate to the chakra system. But you also mentioned initially, going back to the Kabbalah, the Hermetic Kabbalah, that the Hermetic Kabbalah is represented by the central column, but there is also a left column and a right column. And you mentioned that the left column is actually is the occult science, is that right?
It can be that. Yeah, that's one way to discuss it. But it's also the actual name. They call it like pillars in a temple, or the columns or pillars. The column. We'll say the column of severity, something severe, intense. There's a certain fierceness about it, like the fierceness of nature and the fierceness of man, too. That like things we're wrestling with in the world right now. It's like this more primal, power-centered aspect. It's the masculine side of the tree too. The right side there is the yang side, down the body, and it represents the bottom. There's three spheres. Hod, which means splendor, like a splendorous eye, brilliant, like a big light bulb goes off. Wow, that's a great idea. Something you really like a flash of lightning at night. You really see what's in front of you, but then you have to act on faith on that. You have to have, like, once it's revealed to you, once your vision has been revealed, you have the vision quest, you had a glimpse of what it is that you want to achieve and what you really want to create. Then you hit it with Thor's hammer. You hit it with everything you got. You're not stopped by discomfort or frustration or fear. You feel the fear. You do it anyway. You just keep showing up and do what you have to do at the fullness of your capacity. And that's Mars. That's healthy Mars. And Gabor is also known as the celestial surgeon. That's a great phrase too. He's like how surgeons, a lot of their work is to remove harmful tissue, like a cancer surgeon or different, tumors, or removing, like emergency stuff, you got to plug things up. And it's like this, because it's the sword. It's Mars is the warrior. It's the sword. It's the spear. It's like, it's the path of the warrior and the hero. The warrior ideally becomes a true hero, goes beyond. But that energy is required to make things happen. You have to have the fire in your belly and the will and then the next step is Saturn, which Bina at the top of the tree means understanding in Hebrew. So Hod means brilliance. Gebura means intensity of will, and then Mina means understanding, and the understanding comes in Saturn. It's ruled by Saturn, and it's black is his color, and it's like so. You come into true understanding of yourself and of the nature of the world, and as through the Saturnian discipline, that perseverance, endurance, You don't let up until it's done. You don't like, you're not just digging another shallow well, some dream that was really exciting and, oh, okay, try another one. This is like really, like the Americans say, get your nose down to the grindstone, and so that's like, so it's all, it's very assertive. It's requiring like like assertive action of the individual, and to be, to take proactive, be the co-creator, and yeah, and Bina too is considered the great mother of souls, all jivas. She's the mother of all jivas. All air-breathing souls come from her, out of her big yoni, out of her big cosmic uterus. She's like the god, the star god, Egyptian star goddess Nui, who's always painted on the inside face of sarcophagus. And her body is a whole field of heaven. All the stars, and her breasts are two spiral galaxies, and her face is the naked void. And she channeled through Aleister Crowley on April 8th, 1904 in Cairo. The Book of the Law came in 3 chapters, but the first chapter was Nui, or Nut, to N-U-T, like nut. It sounds like a newt or Nui. And she speaks, she utters through him, I am above you and in you. My ecstasy is in yours. Awaken the coiled splendor within you. Put on your wings. Return to me. I yearn to you. Pale or purple, veiled or voluptuous. I am the blue-lidded daughter of dawn. I yearn to you. Return to me. So it's like that, the great mother calling her children home, sending you out into the world too. Another form. Here you go. Like being in a Nautilus shell too. You're living in that apartment in the shell. Then that time's done, and then okay, it's like she's that feminine power to keep the life cycle going, and then the left side of the tree is called the pillar or the column of mercy, and it's composed of and like I say, on the right side of the tree too, it says Mercury, Mars, Saturn. And in Western astrology, there's a distinction amongst planets made that called malefics or benefics. And there's greater malefic and lesser malefic. The great malefic is Saturn. That's the most challenging of the planets. Aging, loss. It's like the whole, and then all the experiences of karma. It's the Lord of karma, and then Mars is the lesser malefic because it's prone to violence and things. So it's like, if it's not controlled right, it can turn into rage. Anger can turn into rage. Something has to be contained and focused, and then on the right side of the tree you have Netzach, which means victory, and that's Venus, and Venus is the lesser benefic. So the beneficial, so it's like pleasure. Venus is pleasure. It's a love of, it's your aesthetic, it's your love of beauty, it's your romantic inclinations and romance and the pleasure principle. And then Jupiter is the next level up, and Jupiter is the great benefic, and he represents uh, expansion of consciousness, good fortune with wealth, good timing, luck, in the right place at the right time, do the right, it's like all that, like it's the goddess Fortuna, like pouring out through her cornucopia, the blessings, and the Lakshmi as well, just pouring coins out. But that's Jupiter. That's when we have good timing, we have good luck. But he represents the name for Jupiter in the Kabbalah is Hesed, and it means love. It means compassion, mercy, kindness, forgiveness, loving kindness, generosity, giving. For it's the Bodhisattva too. It's like, and this is the highest level the soul can go while in a body. So it's the realm of the masters too, like Bodhisattvas. And Bodhisattvas traditionally in Mahayana Buddhism, they're beings that have, through the intensity and discipline and endurance of their practices, have reached a point where they're moving toward freedom. They're not controlled by desire and fear anymore. They're like, but instead of like just melting into the eternal bliss of the divine, they they make a choice to not leave, to continue. Like the Dalai Lama is an example. They continue to reincarnate and to participate and to joyfully participate in the suffering of the world until all souls remember that they're Buddhas, all souls have discovered the Christ within, all souls have found Krishna consciousness. And so it's like that giving away of self, like the Christ impulse, pouring yourself out of mercy, kindness, and but you can become a victim as well too. You got to know how to have boundaries. That's why Kabbalah is showing where all the what alchemies you need to do. And so that represents the throat chakra, like self-purification, purifying the soul. It's like in Catholicism, the purgatory, you didn't go to hell, but you got to clean up stuff, So, and life is heaven and hell too. We're burning through things, and that's the side of Hermes that is, we work. If you can feel it, you can heal it, and you have to feel the whatever discomfort, and you're burning this stuff off, and you're not controlled by it anymore. And then you move up to the top of the pillar, and that's called the Hukmah, and that's ruled by Uranus. So in the Trimurti in Hinduism, you have the planet Uranus is represents Brahma, Lord Brahma, the creator, the firstborn. He's born out of Vishnu's navel. Neptune represents Vishnu, the savior, the avatar, the redeemer, coming, get man out of the ditch he drove himself in. It's like divine intervention kind of thing. So it's like the great avatars. That's Vishnu. That's Vishnu's like compassion and yeah, and very side of sattva too, like the Uranus and Brahma. That's rajasic, right? Action, making things, creating things. Vishnu is sattva. He's like lying back in bliss, dreaming the entire cosmos. And then Shiva is tamasic. He's like breaking it all apart and then resurrecting it. He's the Pluto. He takes it apart and then reconfigure everything, and that's a Plutonian, like death and rebirth. That's Pluto. That's Shiva. And then, and Hukmah means wisdom. And so it's like the archetype. It's like the elementary ideas, the mind of God, the archetypal principles which God creates. Like you see, like you see a painting of William Blake, where God is a great geometer, and that's Uranus, and that's Brahma too, the creator God, and so and Uranus is like the higher octave of Mercury. It's like the higher mind, the universal mind, and so then those two pillars, and then Saturn and Uranus are opposed to each other across the tree, and Saturn and Uranus are the rulers of Aquarius, the age that we're living in now. Is co-ruled. The Saturn's the traditional ruler, but Uranus is the modern ruler, and it was discovered right at the end of the American Revolution, beginning of the French Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution. Steam engine was invented at the same time. So it's like revolution and acceleration of technology, and science is the new religion. That's all Uranian impulse. And then Saturn is like, that's the resistance. So traditional societies, they don't want all this change. They don't want all these gay people and transvestites and, and all these new agers too, they want their traditional values and religion. That's Saturn pushing back. So that dynamic is in there too in the tree. And then you got up the middle again. The middle pillar that's like the highway if you can stay on there, but it's like a razor's edge too. It's basically devotion and faith, and in your connection to the divine and authenticity of self-actualization, self-realizations, and turning toward God. You know, bhakti is the best medicine, you know, for this time we live in.
I know that you're very fond of Bhakti Yoga, indeed, you chant and you do kirtans regularly. Anyway, HinduDave, thank you very much, you know, for like coming back and just explaining a little bit more about, you know, these kind of esoteric subjects that are very fascinating indeed. And practically, they're also a lens on the world and yourself. So,
yeah, it's relentlessly deep. All these subjects, I love it. It's like Jungian psychology. There's no bottom to these things, you know. Kabbalah too. It's like it just. And actually, there's a Kabbalistic phrase I love very much. It's traditional phrase. It says, the deepest in is the highest up. So you're going for the depth dimension all the time in these Hermetic activities. You know, you're like looking for the more toward the eternal and more toward the universal constants. And, you know, it's that's what's moving toward the self. That's what happens when you do approach that. You know, it's like it. So anyway. Cool. I always love talking to you. I love hanging out with you, Luca. You're great.
Nice, nice. And if anybody's up in Pi, you know, go and see HinduDave. He's a very special guy, of course, as you can tell. Lots of knowledge.
You can find us. You can find us on Airbnb, and you look up Pi Mystery Springs, just Pi Thailand, and you can see our properties and descriptions. And I'll send you. Yeah, look it up, Luca. I'd love you to take a peek at it.
Well, me, obviously, I've been there 3 or 4 times, but yes, for the people,
I love you to see, get your input on how you think it looks and the reviews we've gotten. I just
in terms of the actual Airbnb post.
What's happening now? Yeah, get your feedback.
Very nice. Okay, we'll put it in the description anyway. So thank you very much again for being with us today, and wishing you all the best. Okay.
You too. Merry Christmas.
Take care. Merry Christmas.
See you later, bro. Be well. God bless.